Hello friends and welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're making chicken fried steak fingers. So you can make this with pretty much any kind of steak you want to. I'm using cube steak because it's already been tenderized, it's easy to cut, it doesn't have hard pieces in it, it's not going to be extra chewy, and we want these actually to be something that's eaten quite easily. It's not meant to be something you chew on a lot. So we're going to take and cut these into strips, which you can use as many of these pieces of steak you want to. I just used a couple because that's all I wanted to make at the time, because these do make quite a few. This is enough to serve a couple people. So you're going to make your cuts at least maybe an inch wide. They don't have to be super wide or super thick or anything, but the point being is you just want to make sure that they're kind of consistently the same width. Now into a bowl we're going to add 2 eggs. Speaking of eggs, have you been to the store lately to check the price, especially at Walmart? $7 for 18 eggs? That's insane. I'm going to get some wood and build a chicken coop. But anyway, go ahead and stir up your eggs. Make sure that they're blended quite well. And we're going to add some buttermilk to this. Probably about a half a cup would do. And once it's in, we're going to mix this all together to make sure that it's completely blended before we dip anything in it. Now once you get this all mixed up, we're going to set it to the side and we're going to put together our dry ingredients. So you're going to start with a cup of flour, which you're going to add at least a half a teaspoon of baking powder to. Then you're going to add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Then you're going to add a half a teaspoon of onion seasoning, a half a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of Memphis seasoning, which is basically just a grilling seasoning. Then you're going to add a half a teaspoon of pepper. And once you get this all together, you're going to want to mix it up. Make sure you get everything out of your container. My pepper was sticking to the bottom for some reason. Go ahead and stir it through. And what you're going to do is take your strips of steak, lay them into the flour at first to let them just get as much on them as possible. It will stick a little bit just coming straight out of the pack. And once you get this done, what we're going to do is double dip these things. We're going to take them from the flour, put them into the egg and milk mixture, bring them back to the flour, take them back to the egg and milk mixture again, and then bring them back to the flour, and then set them aside, possibly on even a rack or something, so that way they have a chance to kind of absorb the moisture and just dry out on the outer edges a little bit, because that's going to make it better when you go to cook them. They're not going to be as wet and sticky. So go ahead and work your way through all your pieces of steak. It will take a couple minutes to do. If you do not have a wire rack to do this with, you always can just lay them on a plate. I just find that the wire rack does help them dry out a little bit on the outer edges, so that way when you go to fry them, it's a little crispier and it works better because there's not as much moisture to get rid of when you're cooking. Now, when you're moving these back and forth and the flour and seasonings and everything, do it the best you can to get as much flour on it as possible. Even if you have to pick it up a little bit and put it on there, you can do this by hand if you want to get your hands dirty. It's all on your choice of how you want to do it. The best thing about this is the more flour you get, the crispier your outside's going to be, the better these things are going to taste. Because you're actually not just getting flour on it, you're also getting all those seasonings. Now the good thing with what I said as far as mixing up the dry ingredients and the wet is there's enough extra here if you wanted to do 1 or 2 other pieces of steak. If you had it, you can make these for 3-4 pieces probably. And when you're done, you're going to heat up some oil in a pan, and you want to make sure that there's at least, I don't know, almost 2 inches of oil in the pan. You don't want these completely submerged. We're not deep frying them, we're just basically cooking them in the oil. And don't put too many in at a time. I'd say do like 4 if you have a larger pan, maybe 5. And what we're going to do is let these cook for a while until they start to brown and get crispy on each side. So I would say at least 4 or 5 minutes on each side on a higher heat. check them, make sure they're cooking on the bottom part to the point of like at 4 or 5 minutes they're actually browning or getting golden, because you want these to get really golden. And as you can see, I just turned mine and they are extremely golden on the side that was down into the oil. So you want to keep going with this until both sides are completely done. You're talking at least 10 minutes here to do both sides of this, or maybe more, depending on how hot your oil is or how hot you have turned your stove up. Some people's stoves don't heat up as much as others, so it may actually take a little longer. And when you're done, set them to the side on a wire rack to cool, which this will give a chance for the oil to drip out of. And we're going to save a little bit of the oil that was in the pan because we're going to make a gravy to dip these in. So basically, you're going to have in the pan a few tablespoons of oil, and we're going to add to this flour. Now, depending on how much oil you have, it's how much flour you're going to put in. Because you could put like 1/4 of a cup of flour into your oil depending on how much oil there is. What you want to do is to get it actually mixing through really well, and it has a good consistency, kind of like what you see what's going on here. The flour is being absorbed into the oil, and it's actually quite nice because it's not lumpy, it's not all over the place, it just basically is blending together. Now once you get this to a point where you've got it pretty much mixed, you're going to want to cook this for a couple minutes, because that's going to take away a bit of the taste of the flour from the oil. Because if you do it immediately and you go rushing through this, your flour is going to be ever present in your gravy. You're going to taste flour in every bit, and you don't really want to taste that. You want to taste gravy. So keep stirring as it's sitting there. And once you get it pretty much to the point you want it to be, we're going to add some milk to this, and it will depend on how much you have in there to begin with. I'd say start out with about a 1/2 cup of milk, and then if you need more, add it as you go along, because this will thicken up as you stir it. And you don't want this overly thick. You want this to be something that's really silky and smooth that you can dip the steak fingers into. So keep stirring it, and as you see, it will start to thicken up as you keep stirring. So this might take a couple minutes to achieve, but just keep doing it. A whisk is a great thing when it comes to this, because it helps you get into all the corners all across the bottom and stir things together. And as you keep going, you will end up with a gravy that's not overly too thick, but has a great taste. You might want to add some salt and pepper to it, just to give it flavor. I'm doing that in mine because I like the salt and pepper. I actually really like the pepper in it. So put some in, possibly, you know, a 1/2 to a whole teaspoon if that's what you want, and stir it. And as you can see, mine is thickening now, and this is what gravy should do when you're cooking it. So once you're done with this, you're going to serve your steak fingers with gravy in some kind of small cup or whatever to the side of it, because this is what they do at Dairy Queen, and they serve it with some Texas toast, I think, and some french fries. So it's basically something you could add to it to make a great little meal if you wanted to. And when it's done, it looks something like this, and these taste so good. So, and especially if you dip them in the gravy. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you like any of my other videos, please check out my cookbook, which is available on Amazon and in bookstores worldwide. Have a great day.